welcome to another special all live edition of Sportsnaut Scrap Report. I am, of course, Jason Burgos, and as always, I am joined by LA's current number one ranked pound for pound most hate-filled hater, and he is the one and only son of Zamunda. He is Anthony Walker, Senor Hater. How are you doing tonight?
I'm feeling hateful as always, but I realized I did the salute for the wrong fictional African country. So
That's poor job. I mean,
it
you
could
were
be.
ready late. Now we're doing
I was.
Wakanda instead of Zamun. I mean, this is not a good start for you.
All right,
This is
hold
not a
on,
good
hold on.
day.
All right, what
Which
if I
means
put
I'm
on?
probably going to be right a lot, and you're going to be wrong a lot during this
I'll
conversation.
put on my
All
Black
right.
Panther hat. Does that
You
make things
save it
better?
a little bit for Wakanda's side, but the Zamunda side is just very upset right now.
There we go. That's better. All right. Yeah, I feel hateful, man. Let's talk about something like people getting hit in the face for money because I like doing that.
I do too, and we have a lot to talk about in this special live edition. Hopefully, you're watching on our YouTube, our Facebook, on Sportsnaut.com, or our Twitter. Or maybe you're watching it after the fact and you're catching up and everything. We got to talk, of course, later UFC 295 predictions and stuff like that. Since that's this weekend. But before we get to that, we want to get into some of the news this week in combat sports. A lot of big news, and we've covered it on Sportsnaut. We've covered it on Ringside Intel. And the first thing I wanted to get into it was a trio of main event fights were announced by the UFC for their first three pay-per-views in 2024, which is UFC 297, UFC 298, and 299. Those fights are middleweight title, Sean Strickland versus Dricus Duplessis. We got Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilya Topuria. And then we got the fight a lot of people have been looking forward to, Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Vera. I wanted to have a little fun with this, and I wanted to go with a classic game that a lot of us have played, and that is to have three options, but it's murder, marry, and blank, fill in the word you want on these three fights. Usually it's done with sexy ladies or sexy gentlemen, but we're going to do it with these three fights. So you can go first, Anthony. Which of these three, how would you break it down in terms of, let's say, murder, you could care less, marry, you love it, you love to see this fight all the time, and then bang, or, is the fight that, I'll watch it, cool, I'll see it, but I'm not as excited. How does this shake down for these three fights for you?
I mean, quite honestly, it's hard to do this because all three fights are fights that I'm very interested in that have their own sort of appeal to them. But I'm going to go in a very surprising direction as my least favorite out of these three.
Hmm.
And it's the fight that actually is the most important, and when it comes to pure competition, it's the one that I think the purists are looking forward to the most, and it's the one that we both have called for on this show and in our own articles that have been published on Ringside and Sportsnaut. Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilya Topuria is my bottom of these three fights, and not because the quality of the fight is anything that I want to call into question. It's just that we saw Volkanovski get knocked out too recently. Like I'm worried that we're going to see a version of Volkanovski that does not belong in competition. He got knocked out really bad against Makachev very recently, and this is a very, very quick turnaround. I know he's talking about, it's good for his mental health to just stay busy and stay active now, but your actual physical brain might disagree with that. So that's my bottom. Man, I'm probably gonna go for the middle tier. I'm gonna go O'Malley versus Vera. That has great violence potential, and I'd
What's the
like
middle tier? What's that for you?
um, I didn't even. I mean, it depends on what sort of mood I'm in, because all three of those options to, blank, marry, and kill have their place in society. So, um, man, you put me on the spot here because my wife is in the next room, right, and she don't need to hear me say certain things. So don't do this to me, bro. Just accept middle tier is what I'm trying to give you, okay?
No fun, just no fun. But yes,
Absolutely not what my wife already did. No, it's not fun. Uh,
it's
I'm
fight.
sure
You're not banging anybody real. It's just fights. Come on.
I know, but I was about to refer to some things from my past and whatnot. I don't want to get upside down. So, I'm gonna put Sean O'Malley and Marlon Vera at my middle tier. And once again, great fight. The action potential in that is fantastic. I think from an X's and O's standpoint, this should be fun to watch. And it's interesting for fight nerds like us. But we have seen it before,
Mm,
if it goes longer, what can happen, because we didn't get the full taste of what those two pairing would be like. I am excited to see that one again, though. Um, Sean Strickland versus DDP is my number one out of these, and
mm,
I'm very
okay.
surprised that it's my number one because they're probably the two most interesting personalities to put together. To put it lightly, I think the buildup of this might be bizarre to say the least, but it does have some interesting little wrinkles to the whole thing. Like Sean Strickland shocked the world the way he dominated Israel Adesanya. Does that work against someone like DDP, who is far less technical, who surprised us all the way he finished Robert Whitaker? Like, what do these two unlikely guys to rise to the top? What do they look like when put together?
Mm.
And that also includes that mix of personality that's going to be very strange to see in a pre-fight press conference. So that's going to be my number one. It covers all the angles as far as the weird things we like about combat sports, but also just the actual technical side, like what happens. So yeah, that's my number one.
I'm gonna go to a different direction. And I'm going to add in certain kind of the elements of the business side and what's going to draw the fans more than my personal thing. Although my personal opinions on these fights kind of line. Honestly, my murder is unfortunately it's going to be Volkanovski and Ilya Topuria. Great fight, similar to you. It's a fantastic fight, but man, the sizzle value is just the burner is turned on to lukewarm, and we're just kind of keeping things warm with it. It's a great fight, but I can see it do terribly when it comes to views and interest from fans because Ilya Topuria, talented fighter, rising star, not gaining a lot of interest in terms of the mainstream fans, the casual fans, which is unfortunate because he is so good. Maybe this is the fight that does that. And Volkanovski's just another one of those classic pound for pound talents that just doesn't seem to cross over to hit that upper echelon and be that next superstar, which is a shame. But that's kind of just the way MMA and the UFC has always been, unfortunately. That's why I love the fight, not dying to see it necessarily. I'm not necessarily going to throw my money at it. Um, Sean Strickland and DDP is probably my bang because it's a cool fight. I don't know how it's going to go. And I think that's probably the interest and the unpredictableness in being in that category. But I could see it easily be Sean Strickland dominates it, but because there's fun elements, it could probably be wild. It could be a brawl. DDP has delivered as a fighter. You kind of got to watch warts and all. Yeah, he's not the most technical guy in the world, but he's an entertaining fighter. Sean Strickland's a very aggressive, go for fighter. And then the trash talk going into it should be very interesting. So I think that's definitely. But the one I will have to marry and I will watch all the time is O'Malley and Vera. I'm fascinated because of the storyline. It's the only guy to hand Sean O'Malley a loss. Sean O'Malley's right on the precipice of Conor McGregor popularity. This is his first title defense. It's against another great striker, which is right down his alley, where he's delivered exciting things. And it's a guy who can say, "Yep, I beat you." Questionable or not, maybe he had one of those weird instances similar to Michael Chandler, got hit in a weird spot, got the drop foot, and that's a weird, tough way to lose. But he lost. He still lost. He has a TKO loss on his record to Vera, and it's a fascinating rematch and revenge fight. If he can win this fight dominantly, if he can finish a Marlon Vera, one of the toughest, most durable fighters in the division, and I mean, man, what a pelt on the wall! What a piece of revenge! But if Marlon Vera turns into this wild fight, this is Peter Yan versus Sean O'Malley 2, which was a fantastic fight. Oh, we all win. And I think that the potential in it, the storyline, that's the fight I marry. That's the fight I look forward to the most. So let's keep it moving. Let's keep moving on to the next topic. Next, we're going to go into some news to today. And it was
Hit it
fairly,
with that. Hit with that.
it was fairly noticeable news. I mean, it was on ESPN's top headlines, and that was Jake Paul. He announced that he was coming back in December last month, but he didn't let us know who he's fighting. A lot of speculation. Oh, maybe it'd be Nate Diaz Part 2 or somebody like that. Maybe it's Tommy Fury. Maybe it's KSI. In the end, he is fighting Andre August. Now, I'm sure if you haven't heard the news, you're probably going, who? Yes, I think that's most of the responses from most people when they read the news. Yes, Andre August. Quick rundown. on Andre August. Andre August is a 10-1 fighter, professional fighter. The fight's going to be at cruiserweight, which is at 200 pounds, a little bit higher than what Jake's fought at previously. Andre August has won 5 in a row. The only weird thing is this dude was fighting consistently in 2013 to 2019, disappeared from the sport for like 4 years, finally came back. Maybe there was injury, maybe there's personal stuff. I don't know because no one really knows much about Andre August except for Jake Paul because he negotiated this. He comes back, he wins a fight early this year. He's now getting this high profile fight with Jake Paul. To me, this is just high risk, extremely low reward. I don't see the benefit in this fight other than Jake Paul really has the goals of being a champion in boxing, and this is just one of those climbing the ladder experience, work your way up kind of decisions. But man, Jake Paul, in the end, being a boxing champion, I don't know how much really there is money in that compared to a juxtaposition of what he can do in these kind of circus freak show fun fights with just more well-known people. What are your thoughts? Is this just too much risk, and it's doesn't make any sense, or he has a good reason to do it, and it's something he probably needs to do if he wants legitimacy in combat sports?
I mean, I've used this phrase a lot on this show, and I keep on saying it. The truth lies somewhere in the middle. Like, this is very high risk, very low reward, but to Jake Paul, that low reward is worth what he's risking. Like, he's very clearly dedicated himself to boxing for the past several years and has gotten quite good at it. Like, he's done some pretty incredible things. This is just part of that journey. This is him trying to legitimize himself as a boxer. You're not going to legitimize yourself as a boxer beating up on an undersized Nate Diaz. It's just not. It's not going to happen. You're not going to legitimize yourself as a boxer, fighting Tyron Woodley, who originally came from wrestling. Like, you're not going to do that by knocking out Ben Askren, who, even by MMA standards, was a very poor striker. So this is something that he wants for his own personal fulfillment. And the good news for him is that, one, he brings in a built-in audience. I've been there in the building for a Paul Brothers fight and saw a whole lot of people who know absolutely nothing about combat sports, absolutely nothing about it.
Yeah.
A bunch of 12 and 13-year-olds who dragged their clueless mommies and daddies over there and had no idea what was going on. But they knew that some Twitch streamer was walking past and they would stand up and cheer. Like, those kids are going to be watching this. So they're going to be there. He's going to get their money already. Us who are the fight nerds, who are now kind of got our genuine interests engaged by Jake Paul, will be watching. Like, he comes in with a built-in audience. And the best part about this whole thing for him is that if he loses, he can always go back to the freak shows.
Yeah,
he can always go. Those freak show fights are always going to be there. So this is a slightly different path than we're used to from him, but it makes sense. Like, this is more about his personal evolution, and I think that's priceless.
Yeah, I mean, all the points are fair. If that's the goal, and it really does seem like the goal, that he really wants that respect of taking it to the next level. And I get it. There is prestige to him somehow, that journey of YouTuber from Ohio, actor, wannabe rapper, going into this, being good, developing a name, and actually being a champion, being considered a world-class fighter. But in the end, this is still kind of all about the money. And I'm just curious on what Jake Paul's age is. Still young, 26, so he has a lot of time. So that's why probably it makes sense that this fight, why not? And like you nailed it, why not, I guess? He can always go back to it. But man, boxing's that weird thing compared to MMA. And MMA is that sport, especially because UFC branding, if you're under the UFC umbrella, you have a different kind of level of prestige to you. So that helps. And if you lose fights, it doesn't necessarily affect you if you're entertaining later on and you win fights. In boxing is so much about record, and it's so much about public opinion and perspective, even for someone like him. And losing to Tommy Fury changed the perspective and the narrative on him in a weird way, even though we all kind of knew what he was. But at least Tommy Fury was sort of this known commodity in our new kind of reality TV world. Andre August, no one knows who the hell this guy is. So I just worry, especially, I would worry if I was Jake, but knowing them, they probably took the fight for good reason. Losing to someone no one's ever heard of, really can be damaging to a reputation. And yes, he can always go back. Yes, he can fight this guy, but the appeal for him is to win by knockouts, and beat people somebody's heard of. So they want to see who's the next person. So I think it's too high risk. We will see if he goes and knocks this dude out and wins. Man, we're gonna be like, look, he could beat real people. Maybe you have big fights, and maybe he just feels like the freak show fight well has ran dry, and there's but so many more interesting fights he can have. But it's a weird thing, highly risky. But I like Jake. Best of luck to him. Hope he keeps winning. He's a fascinating. I love the MMA and combat sports distributor thing. And hey, hopefully he wins and goes fights in PFL. That's what we really some of
if
us are
he
really excited
wins,
for.
if he wins, PFL can just kiss that goodbye. Like he's not fighting in PFL if he wins this.
Yeah,
Because that actually, I'm glad you mentioned that because that actually could be his pivot point if he loses to Andre August. Like
yeah,
that's his escape route. Like he could go
yeah.
back to the celebrity boxing circuit and fight KSI or fight, I don't know, what name your pick of, like Anthony Pettis or something like that. He could go that direction if he wanted to, but man, PFL's right there. He got that contract signed already. All right, well let me just bring the suckers on board for this new wave and see what happens. Like that would be a great pivot. Like this might be a very very well calculated move by Paul. If he doesn't pass this test, well, he's got another life raft. So this is really no lose situation for him,
Yeah, it's a fascinating
except if he
story.
loses.
Yeah, then it's a disaster. So there's so much lose in the situation, and yeah, wild. It's fascinating, but he's very much a strategist, and he knows what he's doing, and he doesn't. He'll take calculated risks. So this is a calculated risk, just because he has more experience, but probably on paper he probably should easily beat him. But that said, of course, wherever you're watching this, like, share, subscribe, comment, give us guest requests, and let us know what you think of the conversation. But interesting thing that came up this week, we're talking about fights and opponents and everything like that. A major story a couple weeks ago was UFC 294, that wild situation where both the two top fights had to get new opponents for different fighters like a week before. Now, of course, when it came to the lightweight title fight, the main event, Alexander Volkanovski, he fought Islam Makhachev. Great fight that has pound for pound relevancy and importance, stuff like that. It's a rematch of a previous fight that was super close. But it came out this week. Dustin Poirier revealed that he was actually in the running for that, and it seemed like Hunter Campbell was definitely gonna give it to him. And he thought, he was under the impression he probably was gonna get the fight. He felt he could make weight. He felt he could do it. In the end, obviously, we know that didn't happen. That said, interesting question to debate. Did the UFC, especially since Islam just ran through Volkanovski in impressive fashion in the first round, did the UFC mess up by not making Islam versus Poirier? Or thinking about it, now that this has happened and stuff like that, they probably did the right thing. And since that was an easy fight, a throwaway, no excuses galore because of short notice, we still at least maintain Poirier versus Islam, which is a fascinating fight on its own. Revenge on some level for Poirier because Habib beat him, same kind of guy. Did they make the right move, or did they mess up and fumble the bag by not putting Poirier in that fight?
They fumbled the bag by putting Volkanovski there, but
Hmm.
I don't think they fumbled the bag by not going to Poirier. They had Gamrot right there. He was the
Yeah,
replacement fighter. That was your bag right there. That was in. Now, of course, that's not the sexiest name on the marquee, but he was there for a reason, to be a replacement fighter. So their replacement fighter fills in that gap, and then you have your star fighters that you want to promote and really put the hype behind and all that for later. Like that was the escape. They
yeah,
had it already. So
yeah.
they fumbled the bag by just forcing a super fight and forcing a rematch. This was, it was destined to not live up to expectation based on the circumstances. And granted, we got a KO of the year candidate, but it happened in such a overwhelmingly dominant fashion that it's going to be far, far, far from those fight of the year conversations when we're talking about the first meeting between Volkanovski and Makachev. And we just got finished talking about how we feel the amazing pairing of Volkanovski and Tuporia is tainted now. So you fumbled a bag for the future
Yeah.
by picking up this quick super fight and putting that together all wrong. Poirier ain't got nothing to do with this. Gamrot should have been the replacement.
Yeah, I think they made the right decision. It worked out best for me, especially it worked out. Islam is the star of the future. Getting that definitive win over a guy like Volkanovski, who's a current champion, pound for pound guy, it worked out perfectly for them. It's the card, it happens so late. Yeah, you're gonna affect pay per view buys, but you still have Hamza on there. You still got Islam Makhachev on there. Your tickets are sold. It's still gonna be do well and stuff like that. And yeah, I just feel like Poirier and Islam is such a fascinating fight, and a fight that needs time to breathe and promote and build, and that can do so well. It would have been a waste to just throw it away on short notice with no build. Yeah, some people might have jumped at it, but I think it's a fight, especially for that division, that's far more deserving. And it's especially if we're not going to get Charles Oliveira. So I think probably not on purpose, probably just how things worked out. The UFC walked their ass into the best of both worlds on a lot of levels. Moving on from that, talking some big fights. I hope I say this right. I put the pronunciation, but Jailton Almeida, big win this past week in the UFC Sao Paulo. Faces beats Derek Lewis, decision. Now, this is a guy who has been finishing people in a lot of his fight. I think in every UFC fight he has a finish. But this one he did not. Goes to unanimous decision, dominant, clear. Derek Lewis was never in the fight, but considering it became Mayweather style, it gets to the fourth, fifth round. He's clearly winning. He's clearly better, and he's not finishing him. It's like, another takedown, another submission that doesn't work. That said, when you look at the division, after Aspinall and Pavlovich, John Jones probably not going to be ready for the summer. Stipe Miocic, I don't know what's up with him. He maybe he fights, maybe he just wants to fight John Jones and then call it a career. So what do you do after this? Did Almeida fumble the bag, fumble the situation a little bit, and his decision maybe cost him, or it really doesn't matter? Because let's go through the options. If it isn't Almeida, we got Curtis Blades, just lost to Pavlovich. That doesn't seem like a guy who deserves a title shot. Maybe you can make a case against Aspinall if Aspinall wins. You got Stipe. Dude's been out for more than 2 years. Who knows? I mean, I'll take it, but it's a weird situation. Alexander Volkov won 3 straight since he lost to Aspinall. This is a guy that maybe seems like a strong contender. You got Cyril Gane. Cyril Gane's just interim champion. He lost to John Jones, the GOAT. He's been fantastic. Otherwise, he only lost to Ngannou and John Jones in the UFC. Or is it Almeida? Who should get the winner of Aspinall and Pavlovich next? Because, man, it's pretty weird and messy after those two.
I don't think there's any rush to put together who's going to fight the winner of the interim heavyweight title fight. I say just don't make an announcement. Let things play out for a little bit, because let's just see what John Jones heals like. You know, I'm we know USADA's about to be out the door. Yeah. He might heal faster. I don't know. Just saying, those are two completely unrelated things. So he could heal fast. He could be ready on a timetable that's more favorable to just getting things back on track. So I don't think there's any rush to put anything together. Now, as far as the fighters that would make the best options, I mean, Almeida didn't exactly thrill the world with the way he beat Derek Lewis, but I'm didn't surprise me at all how it played out. Like that seemed like the way it should have happened, I guess. Yeah. But Cyril Gane's always there. Like Cyril Gane always makes sense. I think he makes a fantastic pairing with Aspinall. That would be a very interesting fight to watch, to see those two striking styles blend with one another. Volkov is also a guy who is just always kind of fun to watch. I think he just by his pure stature is an entertaining person to put in front of you. But you don't have to rush it either way. Just let it breathe. Let us digest what happens on Saturday, and then we'll reassess things after a month or so, and we can get an update from John Jones's injury and how his rehab is going and whatnot. I'm sure he's probably had the surgery by now, I'm guessing. Yeah, I'm sure he was on the surgical table very soon after the injury. Probably already started rehab. Let's see what happens. No need to rush.
Yeah, it's this definitely not going to rush. I mean, but they're probably going to have to make some sort of decision, just because it seems like, just based off of reports, Jones versus Stipe is probably the plan, but that can always change. So that's maybe middle of the year. Like, Aspinall or Pavlovich shouldn't have to wait a year plus to get it. So they're gonna have to do something. It seems again always can change. I think it really is only Cyril Gahn and Volkov. And as uninteresting as it sounds, if they could easily probably do a big show, stadium, maybe show in England or France. England versus France, Cyril versus Aspinall. There's a lot of ways you can go by that storyline wise, and then it's a good fight. I really feel like it's Cyril Gahn. I know people are going to love that, but the guy's super talented. The guy's only lost to the last two champions. The Francis Ngannou fight was super close. Yes, he got dominated by John Jones, but he's still an elite fighter. He's still a fantastic fighter, and either matchup is good. Volkov probably deserves it. It'd be good if he got a rematch with Aspinall, although he got finished. If Pavlovich won, man, you go Russia versus Russia. That's an interesting way to go about it. I think either way, those are the only options. Blades is taking himself out of it. Unfortunately, I think Almeida, that performance is going to force him into another fight before then, and then Stipe, who knows what's going on with him. But what, you got more?
Yeah, I was just thinking, why don't they? I mean, they could do a card like, I can't remember what number this was. I want to say it was 146 or something like that, where it was all heavyweight main card. You could put together something like that and just let it play out itself, and they'll figure it out. Like there's absolutely no reason to rush the winner of Aspinall and Pavlich into something, except for the to be the content lords, to just throw bodies in to fill in slots. That's the only reason why they need to rush on this.
Yeah, yeah. So covered all the main news that we're going to talk about in terms of the fight week. Let's move in to UFC 295 talk. But first, please, wherever you're watching this, or if you're listening to this on those various platforms, share, subscribe, comment. Let us know what you think in the conversation. Who's some of the fights you're looking forward to at UFC 295. We're not going to talk the whole card. We never do that. We don't go through every fight on the card and every pick. And I mean, we could a little bit, but I think I just really want to focus on three of the main fights, because in the end, it's a very strong top two fights, but the card below it's fine. It's not as wildly impressive as some of the recent pay-per-views have been. It's a solid, okay card beside the top two fights. So we're just going to keep to these three. The three I want to talk about is one.
Jason, do you mind if I just interject for just a second here, because I want to.
I do mind, but I would allow it.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for your kindness. Nice haircut, by the way. I think it. Yeah, you're looking good, man. I think we can. I just want to throw this out there to you. Does it feel like this event has like no buzz leading up to it?
Completely. John Jones off the card took all the air out of it.
Yeah. Now I know I'm lately, just my kids have been sick and all sorts of crazy stuff going on in my house, so I haven't been fully connected the way I normally, aside from I wake up every day and write my articles and whatnot, but it just doesn't feel like a fight week. Like, it actually took me to scroll around on Twitter today to realize, oh wait, that's this weekend.
Yeah,
that's happening this weekend. That's never happens with a Madison Square Garden card. Like, it's always such a huge thing. So whether it be Jones and Stipe falling off the card, or just we're caught up in this storm of all sorts of side attractions, like we're still buzzing off of Ngannou and Fury and all that. Are we just in an era where this stacked card, at least this main card, just doesn't feel important because there's just too much other stuff going on?
I think John Jones just completely took the air out of it, because you also had Stipe, you had this importance, and also I think the UFC has to take some of the blame for this. Now, the co-main event is a very good fight, but I was thinking about it recently, and in recent pay-per-views, I've gone to my in-laws and I've gone over to their house, and we'll watch the pay-per-views together. We'll have a real good time and they enjoy it. And I was thinking about it. I've seen most of the recent pay-per-views with them, and we're probably going to do it again this weekend. This would be the third time most of them who don't watch UFC avidly are going to see Alex Pereira in a main event. I think on some level there's Alex Pereira fatigue. We almost seen too much of him in big fights. It's like Marvel fatigue finally setting in, unfortunately. And no John Jones, it kills it. And then if you look at the card, for people in the area, there's a lot of cool things. I get it. Like you got Matt Frivola, who's popular. Pat Sabatini is a regional guy. Uh, Even a Tabitha Ricci, Lupita Godinez, that's a good fight. Roosevelt Roberts is on the card. Jared Gordon, other local guys on the card. Dennis Bazuka is on the card. I mean, that's cool. But for people outside New York, they don't care. This card isn't very good. This card outside the top three is very much a fight night sort of card. And I think that's part of it. No John Jones. And that's probably, they knew that. Okay, we'll throw John Jones on it because we know the rest of the card is so. But no John Jones. A co-main event that's just not catching attention outside the diehards. Maybe a little fatigue. Yeah, just, you're right. This card, for New York City card, for Madison Square Garden card, which I've been to the last couple ones, yeah, this doesn't compare at all to the fake title fight between Masvidal and Diaz. Masvidal and Diaz had buzz up the yin yang, and it had a good solid card. You had Trump in the building, The Rock in the like that was
Got the
buzz.
Grand Theft Auto promos and everything. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
it's just we don't have any of that, and it feels like it isn't as important. When you're talking about the main event, which we're going to talk about that. Like that's a fantastic fight.
Yeah.
The co-main event is a fantastic fight. The third fight from the top that we're about to talk about is very, very, very important to the division. Like there's some good classic just beat 'em up action that's going to be on this card. Even when you mentioned Matt Frivola, like good Lord, that man is a monster and puts on entertaining fights consistently. So there's a lot of fun stuff for fight fans on this, but it just doesn't have that appeal. Like when, you've been to the Madison Square Garden events, I've been to some of the big marquee events in the LA area in Vegas. And when you have like outlets like Home and Garden coming to cover the fight because something they think is cool from a pop culture standpoint is going to be there, they're not going to be at this one. Like there's not going to be like a Complex or or comicbook.com or any of those fringe outlets that every so often dip their toe in the water in MMA for this one.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel like, and that's what was so special about all these Madison Square Garden cards. They had that special vibe that felt big, even if it wasn't the elite fighters. It just, even I was at Derek Lewis versus Daniel Cormier main event, and that's when like a young Israel Adesanya versus Derek Brunson was on
that had buzz card going into it.
Yeah, that felt it too, and I think we all knew. Yes, Derek Lewis is a monster. He's dangerous, scary, and he's much bigger than Dan Cormier.
And he was just coming off of the my balls are hot thing. So it was like it was like the perfect storm of, okay, if you're gonna put a late notice fight on for this main event, this is what you go with, because you got the super popular, charming Daniel Cormier against the super popular, who's surging and viral right now because he says crazy things in his post-fight interview, which, by the way, his last post-fight interview was on the heels of the biggest card in UFC history. So yes, let's capitalize on this right now. Like it had that sort of urgency to it that this really, really seems to lack. Jason, I want to ask you one more question before we go into our fight picks. Do you think that this time at Madison Square Garden that Donald Trump shows up after he leaves court?
Well, but I mean, court isn't on Saturdays.
Yeah, but don't ruin it. Don't ruin it, man. Don't ruin it.
Everyone knows federal buildings are closed Saturday.
Does he sit there with his lawyers and they're like going over strategy to resume the case Monday, and he says, "You know what, guys, I'm going to take a break. I got to see my guy Dana and all the people hitting each other down the street. Let's go."
I don't think he does it just because one of his guys aren't there. Jorge is one of his guys, and he was in the main event, so that was part of it. Colby Covington is one of his guys.
Dude, it's a UFC fight, man. They're all his guys.
But that's true. That's true. But in the end, he's never gone to them except that one. So he's really not a guy who goes to them often. Like, so, I would say no. I mean, it would be smart though. Like, just the rogue criminal is out on the loose and he's at Madison Garden. Like, he's that kind of thinking of that guy. But yes, I don't think he'll be out there, unfortunately. Aside from Agent, you know what? Let's talk about the fights. Let's get into the first fight I want to get into of our three that I feel like worth covering is Jessica Andrade versus Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie's a slight favorite on this. Cover this in my UFC picks for Sportsnaut.com and for Ringside. Um, this really feels like a make or break fight for Jessica Andrade, and I love Jessica Andrade. Jessica Andrade really is. I may be in a minority. I don't know. She's really one of my favorite fighters of like the last decade. I just absolutely love her fight style. Always interested in fight. Her and John Lineker are very similar, but she's just this pint-sized tank. I respect that she's fought at multiple weight classes, a champion at strawweight, earned a title shot at flyweight, just talented. But that said, she's lost 3 straight. She's got a lot of wear and tear in her body. She's only 32, but she's got over 30 fights. It's showing in the results. Like this feels like if she can't beat Mackenzie Dern, she's not a top 10 fighter, top 15 fighter anymore. And maybe she just calls it a career. You know, she's even talked about not making that much money in UFC, doing better on OnlyFans, stuff like that. I can see her call it a career after this. And Mackenzie Dern has had some nice wins, but when she's had to have those breakthrough wins, she hasn't been able to get over the hump. And this just feels like that perfect time to get over the hump over a former champion. Be it if they're on a downturn in their career, it doesn't matter. This is a star. I'm picking Mackenzie to get probably maybe a second round submission. And actually, no, I'll go first round. I just feel like it's going to work like that. And that's a bad luck phase. Andrade is like a lot of great fighters have been in the past. What are your thoughts? Is this really make or break? Is this a big career defining moment that Jessica Andrade has to put her draw the line in the sand and this is it? Like, and what is your pick? Who gets this win?
This is absolutely a make or break moment for Jessica Andrade. She's on a 3-fight losing streak, if I'm not mistaken, and if I'm not mistaken, they're all finishes.
Yeah. Yep.
This is a steep fall from grace. And granted, Andrade has never held a UFC title, but she was always sort of like the de facto number one contender
Yes.
in multiple divisions.
Yep.
I think if she loses, then that status is we're well past that point. I think we're already past that point, but we're gonna really not even be able to see it in the rear view mirror. If she loses to Mackenzie Dern, and what a horrible time for her to fight Dern, right? Dern has made vast improvements to the holes in her game, as we saw like in the Angela Hill fight, like to outstrike someone like Angela Hill, who is a fantastic Muay Thai practitioner, and just give her the business all the way around. This is the bad time to be fighting Dern. I feel like Dern is one of those people that sort of fighter that Andrade would have eaten up about 4 years ago.
Yep.
Like she would have decimated her. Like you talking about a woman who doesn't have like that one punch knockout power, who has this overwhelming skill in submissions, but you gotta take a lot of risks to get to that point. And Andrade is so strong that she powers out a lot of that stuff like that. Man, this would have been easy work for her a few years ago. But we are in 2023, hitting into 2024, and Andrade is not the same anymore. I think Dern takes this, and I think it's a pretty ugly one too, man. I think Dern gets a finish somewhere late second round.
Just to show more love to Jessica Andrade, Bate Azteca. Look at this resume. Look at this resume. Yes. This is one of the better resumes. I'm going to go back to let's see here, 2012 in Samurai FC9, and then go up and listen to some of the names she's fought since 2012, and a lot of them are wins. Jennifer Maia, former title challenger. Mm-hmm. Liz Carmouche, Bellator champion, former title challenger. Raquel Pennington, she went up and waited for Raquel Pennington, and she beat her. Raquel Pennington. Larissa Pacheco, PFL champion, who ended Kayla Harrison's run. Mary Renault, solid fighter. Raquel Pennington, the second time, lost that one. Jessica Panay, solid. Joanne Wood, formerly Calderwood, solid win. Angela Hill, solid win. Joanna Jacek, Claudia Cordelia, Tisha Torres, another former title challenger. Carolina Kovalkiewicz, title challenger. Rose Namajunas, two-time champion. Those last 4, all wins. Weili Zhang, she lost to. Rose Namajunas again. Caitlin Chukagian, one of the better fighters at flyweight in like the last decade. Unsung, kind of really good fighter. Shevchenko. Cynthia Calvillo, good solid fighter. Amanda Lemos, very good fighter. Beater. Lauren Murphy beat her up bad. Erin Blanchfield, Zhao Nan Yan, and then Tatiana Suarez. Like, look at
Yeah,
that
that's a
resume.
that
The
is a
who's
hell of a
who.
schedule. And I misspoke because, but I think this shows like sort of the weird legacy that Andrade has right now. Like I said, like, well, she never held a belt, like, but she did. She did for like 5 minutes, and then they threw her into the fight with Weili Zhang where she got knocked out really quick. Uh,
Yeah,
we're talking about someone who, if they existed just slightly out of this era, or if
yeah.
women's MMA was to the point that it's now, like several years before, if we push that timeline a little bit around, like she probably lords over a lot of stuff, right? She
If she was
probably
in the
is a
Ronda Rousey era,
yeah,
she owns it. Owns it.
yeah. And she was there, but she was still kind of finding her way and was
Yep.
still sort of, they didn't have the strawweight division at the time that she came over to the UFC, and it was like it just wasn't right for her. It was just weird. It was just really weird. And she's sort of a victim of just time not lining up to what when she was her at her best. But unfortunately, I don't think she gets it done on Saturday. And I will give you credit, Jason, too, because to mention her among like your favorite fighters of the past decade, that's not a common opinion, but it makes a hell of a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
Like,
That
this
that
is someone
resume,
who
man.
the resume that you just ran down is stellar, like among the best resumes
Yes.
that exist in MMA, period, male or female, like bar
Yep.
none. Like, she's got like a Chael Sonnen type resume where it's like, yo, he fought this person and that
Yes.
person and this legend and that, just over and over and over again, but just couldn't fully capitalize with that long title reign
Yeah.
or true stardom. So
Uh,
yeah, but that's yeah, she's definitely one of the more entertaining fighters of the past decade, for
Yeah.
sure.
And it's just like she's only 5'2", wasn't technical,
Yeah,
it was just bombs and grit and just like and like a little Wolverine, and then even like the Weili Zhang fight, that loss at the time, it was like, damn, like I know Zhang is good, but rough, that was rough, she lost so quick. But now when we look back, and then Zhang is gonna go down as one of the greats
yeah,
ever. That was a big moment for Zhang. That's when she stamped her place as one of the best. So even that loss is like, she lost to Zhang, she lost to Shevchenko. These are the all timers. Like, amazing. But not to talk too much. I could talk about Jessica Andrade all day long. I love it that much. But
you subscribed to the OnlyFans, didn't you?
a little, maybe a little. I mean, she's not into guys, but you gotta.
Right. You have the same haircut though.
Right? This is for her. This is for her. Moving on. Let's talk. We've talked a little bit about it, but let's talk about the co-main event. Sergey Pavlovich versus Tom Aspinall. I haven't looked this forward to kind of like a super prospects on the cusp. I mean, they're more than prospects, they're elite guys, but to like this feels sort of like Bader, John Jones in a way, but an even better version because they've done more than those two did. But
Yeah,
even when Bader and John Jones fought, it was like these are going to be the guys. And in a lot of ways,
yeah,
they still were. Bader had to leave UFC and to really build his legacy, and it's a great legacy now. But that was, you just felt this is important. And this really feels like one of those moments because it also just has the history of the title. But this feels like the winner here is you know what this is? This is Kane and Dos Santos won. This is that fight. Like, this is the side. Who's the guy? Who's the man on the mountaintop that's going to be there after John Jones and Stipe to move on? Really close lines. Early lines had Aspinall as a favorite. Earlier this week, it got down to a -118 Aspinall, -102 Sergey Pavlovich, which just pretty much means pick 'em. It's that close. Both can strike, though Pavlovich is the far heavier hitter. Aspinall is the more nimble, quick, diverse. Pavlovich, good. He has good grappling, though he doesn't use it much, but he has it if he needs it. Aspinall, fantastic jiu-jitsu guy. In the classic words of Anthony Walker, who do you got?
Whew, man. Good Lord.
One.
I'm leaning toward Aspinall.
Yeah.
I'm leaning because I typically go toward the guy who's gonna be quicker, the guy who's gonna be more technical, the guy who's gonna have a little more variety in what he does.
Yep.
But man, Pavlich has some sledgehammers on him. Here's the thing: if it stays on the feet, I got Aspinall. I got Aspinall winning. Um, and I think it goes to decision. I think he peppers them from the outside a lot and moves around. And
Yeah.
if he can keep that motion up, but man, if this goes to the floor, I don't think Pavlich is going to be the guy who's going to get submitted. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're talking about like this like tank of a man who
Yes.
hits really really hard
Crazy.
and has this thorough credentialed background in wrestling that we've barely seen in the
Yes.
UFC, right?
Yep.
That's just sitting there like this isn't like the like granted Justin Gaethje had credential was a good credential wrestler, but it just didn't exist until like in MMA. It didn't exist until like what, like a year and a half ago or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Pavlovich or Pavlovich, his credentials are higher in wrestling, right? He's
Yeah.
got like some serious weight behind him in that skill. I don't think that's the guy that you're going to finesse on the ground, especially being
Yeah.
that strong. It just doesn't seem like this. I think if it goes to the floor, I think I think Aspinall gets his head blasted in with like super hammer fists from the top. He's just doing his head's just bouncing off and off the canvas. But I don't think it goes there. I
Yeah.
think Aspinall is going to be fast enough and nimble enough to get out of some of those takedown attempts when they come out of desperation. I think he wins a pretty clear decision here. It's gonna be jabs, it's gonna be movement, it's gonna be footwork. It's probably not gonna be the most entertaining thing, but like I said, we're fight nerds. We'll find something to enjoy about it.
I think and the thing about it, and no disrespect, and I hope he doesn't see this because he'll probably crush my head. Pavlovich feels like the guy that he hasn't hit his he hasn't hit his like fight IQ space. Not to say he doesn't have it, but there's that next level where
Yeah.
you strategize, you dissect the guy beforehand, you have this set game plan to play him B, C, D if things change. He seems like a guy that he has a great tool set, he's going to use it, and he's going to stick with it. Because there's been times that he's taken some major shots. He could have just wrestled Derek Lewis, but he didn't. He's a lot of people he could have done those things too because of his background that he just chose to stand. And I get it. Let's look at this. Outside of the wildness of losing to Alistair Overeem, which is crazy that he actually does have a loss in the UFC, first round knockout, first round knockout in 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 straight fights. Like this guy putting stars to sleep, putting Curtis Blades to sleep, putting Derek Lewis to sleep, tied to Ivasa. Like I get it. He has a strategy. He has a style. He uses it and it works. But I've always been a big believer. We've all seen it in fight sports. Speed kills. And when you're at this weight with this level of technique, Tom has that. He has the speed advantage. He's faster. And my pick, I don't think it's going to go decision. I think he's actually going to stop Sergey. I just feel it's going to be one of those things, those classic, going to play low, going to box a little bit, and he's going to wait for that moment to bring the kick up, and he's going to get him. He's going to clip him. He's going to fall. And Tom Aspinall, who's also a fantastic finisher in his own right, will get the finish, be it submission, be it TKO. I think he'll get a TKO. I just think when it comes to speed, and unlike Frank Mir, we talked about this, he feels like Frank Mir. He sort of almost looks like Frank Mir in ways. He has big power that Frank Mir unfortunately didn't have. And he has that. If he clips you because he's nimble, he can move around. He's done. He's gonna finish. He's gonna put you away. He's that kind of fighter. So yeah, I'm going with Aspinall as well. But if I'm wrong and he caves in Aspinall's head, I would not be surprised whatsoever. He's that fantastic fighter, and he's going nowhere if he loses. Pavlovich is here to stay. That's the best part about this. Both these dudes are young. This is why it is Kane and Dos Santos. These guys and Almeida, these are the guys going forward.
They're going to meet each other again. Like this
Yeah.
is going to be the first of several pairings with these two. Like this is destiny. I feel like this is the fight that we've been talking about this fight. I know me and you personally have texted each other during events like, oh, I can't wait to see this for at least a year now. That's been going on.
Yep. Yeah. It's just the beginning of the journey for a lot of these guys. Now talking about the end of this journey, talking about UFC 295 journey and going to the main event. You hit it on it earlier, my lord. Yuri Prohaska versus Alex Pereira. It's just a fantastic fight on paper, and I hope it at least goes 2 or 3 rounds. Please, because if it's a quick finish, I'll be so disappointed. But I mean, two guys that are outstanding strikers in such different sorts of ways. In my predictions for the sites, I'm actually leaning Yuri Prohaska, and the reason I'm going with Yuri is unpredictability, good chin. Yes, he's been knocked down, hurt, but he survived them. He's not been finished really, and I think you have to factor in Alex's age and wear and tear. He's slowing down, and that's the big advantages he had. Israel had over him. He's slower. He's not. He's kind of plodding. He's not super fast. He kicks fast and everything like that. I just think Yuri, with his reach, big tall guy, unpredictability, as long as he can hold up and Alex does not take his head off at some point in the first round, which I think is very possible still, I think Yuri is just going to catch him in that classic wild clap. He's going to do some spinning back elbow, weird crescent kick nonsense, and he's just going to catch Alex at some point. That's what I'm picking. I think Yuri's just going to get him with some unpredictable stuff while being durable, getting through the weathering the storm early, and getting to Alex Pereira. I would say third round. What do you got on this one?
Oh man, this is another one I've kind of gone back and forth on. I'm leaning toward Pereira right now.
Yeah, not a bad pick. He's a favorite.
Yeah, but it's going against part of my brain right now, because in pure MMA, right, where you're grappling and everything too, Prohaska should have the advantage here, right? Like this, he should have the clear advantage, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Pereira got taken down by Israel Adesanya. You know, that's not a good sign for your grappling chops, I think. But at the same time, Prohaska is the sort of guy to get himself into wild fights because he's just a savage like that. He's just a knucklehead.
Yep.
You don't want to get into that sort of wild fight with someone like Pereira. Like that dude, not only is he just like incredibly technical, in a kick, like deceptively technical as a kickboxer, but he hits so hard. You can't
and even
just
hits
give
hard
away
late.
free
like
shots.
He got Israel late, so he's powerful to the end.
In the fifth round, he's still able to floor you with a shot. Like he maintains that power throughout the 25 minutes. That's not a good person to fight that wild brawl style with. We'd have to see like a totally different version of Prohaska where he has got this super dialed in game plan that neglects everything about the fans cheering, that neglects everything about whatever his personal martial arts code is and how he wants to go out on the shield and all that. He's gonna have to ignore all of that, and he's gonna have to get like the most non-sexy, just beaten potatoes win. And I don't think he's that sort of guy. I think he's the guy who's going to have one hand really, really low, like he does. He likes to stand in that sort of like Shaw Brothers Kung Fu movie stance, and get his head blasted in with the hopes that he blasts his head back. I'm not trying to play that game with Pereira. Now, the downside on Pereira is that this will be his fourth fight in like a year. And one of those fights,
he's a little fatigued. He's fought a lot.
He got knocked out pretty hard in the not too distant past. So, at what point does his body just say, "Okay, bruh, like you've been running us into the ground this year. It's time to settle down." We've seen that happen. Well, like I remember Donald Cerrone ran into that brick wall a couple times where he would fight way too much, and then that last fight of the year, he's just a shell of himself. Unless we see that, I think Pereira should capitalize on everything that Prohaska leaves open for him. I got Pereira winning this by like third round KO.
And I'll just throw this in here. Just Alexis had 40 kickboxing fights, now 10 in MMA. He's also 36 years old, just turned 36. That's the big things with me. The weird. I just feel like he's slowed down enough that someone like Prohaska is young enough to get to him. But boy, if I'm wrong,
just got
I'm
inducted
not gonna be
into the Glory Hall of Fame, Glory Kickboxing Hall of Fame, like a few days ago or last weekend or something like that. So yeah, we're talking about a very, 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 very serious kickboxer who has ungodly power. Don't give free shots to that man, please. You.
Agree. Well, that's all of our thoughts and predictions on UFC 290, 295. Please let us know what you think. Like, share, subscribe, comment. Tell us everything you know. Let us know what your picks are for the big fight card on Saturday. As always, I am Jason Burgos. He is Anthony Walker. Until next time, everybody, bye-bye.
And stay hateful.